On the face of it, it sounds easy. Go find 3 typical kids in Watts at Locke High School, follow them for a year. Oh, sure. There's no central casting. Find a kid who's being raised by his grandmother on a fixed income, whose mother died of breast cancer when he was 14 years old. Find a kid whose parents are broken up because of the financial pressures, who lives in essentially a garage apartment in these cramped quarters. Or find another kid whose brother is killed by random gang violence and literally dies in her arms. Go find those 3 kids and make sure we get 1 tall, 1 short, 1 boy, 1 girl. It's hard to find typical, and yet incredibly, that's what we did. Not superstars, not rock stars, not valedictorians. We found 3 typical kids. At the very beginning, we knew we wanted to do something about Locke High School, and we wanted to cover this extraordinary transition from being with LAUSD to Green Dot. How do you tell that story? You could do it the usual, typical paint by numbers way and talk to the experts and the grown-ups and the administrators, but the more we thought about it, we said, it's a story about kids, what this transition is going to mean to the students themselves. These kids, I keep calling them kids, maybe they don't like that in a way, but the Locke students that we followed, Damon, Joanna, Brian, they are like relatives. I mean, they're like some kids that you used to know when they were little or something, and then you come to know them and care about them. And I think all of us on this team, myself, the photographer, associate producer, Alexandria Gales, we just got to know them in such an intimate way. We're their friends off camera, and that as well as on. And I think that's also what made being on camera so comfortable for them. And after a while they forget that, oh, is that camera there? I didn't know you were following me. I'm on camera, who knew? But that's what happens. They just, after a while, they're just sort of talking to you. And sometimes they're talking to, him, the guy behind the camera. Hey, I'm talking to you. That's what happens. If you're doing it right, and if you do it a lot, after a while, the people forget that they're even on camera. And I love that so much, because it's as though you were just dropped into their world, and it's showtime. It's just a very, very true way to tell a story. An all-natural sound piece is literally that. It's all natural sound. There's no narration, no voiceover, as you typically see and hear in a television story. Inside Locke High and Return to Locke High, once we found those students to follow, this is completely representative of what a natural sound piece, an all-natural sound piece should be. You ask about how exhausting this is. There's a perfect day that describes it all. This is exhausting, and it happens a lot on these kinds of shoots. We got there before dawn. I mean, roosters were crowing, and we're knocking on the door, waking Brian up. We're there when he gets in the shower. So we're up that early. We're on our feet all day long, shooting this band competition, cold as can be. So when you get back to Locke, it's 6:30, 7 o'clock. Mind you, we've been up since about 4:30. The grown-ups we just want to drop right where we are. We want to call it a day, call it a wrap. And I, as the producer, had to say, we can't stop. We haven't interviewed Brian yet about the day. Well, the photographer wanted to hurt me. There was no getting away from it. He really gave me this look like he's a mild-mannered guy, he's a professional, but he was angry, period. And he did it by the hardest. And that's just what a producer has to do. The associate producer thought the same thing, can't we get it some other time? And I, as the producer, have to say, and believe me, I didn't want to say this, I have to say no. We got to do it now. There will only be one day when Locke has just won the band competition. That emotion won't be there. It won't be there tomorrow. It won't be there next week. It's there now. And the photographer having that camera on his shoulder, in the cold, in the wind, as exhausted as I was, he had to be doubly exhausted. And yet, being the pro that he is, he hated me, but he did it. And we got great stuff. We had to do it. We just had to do it that day. We got wonderful stuff. Before this series, a viewer might never know any kids who live down in Watts, in the inner city. You know, your paths just wouldn't cross. That's the way it is in Los Angeles. You know, the neighborhoods don't necessarily intersect. And you might think that there's something inherently different about these kids. And what the series does is dispel that myth. That's what I love about it. Whatever myths you may have had, whatever stereotypes you may have, as a result of this series, by watching it, you have gotten to know 3 completely typical kids who happen to live in Watts, who happen to go to Locke High School. And because you know them, their hopes, their struggles, their fears, their dreams, you care about them. That's it. You care about them as a result of knowing them.